I turned off Microsoft Defender 8 months ago, and not a single thing has gone wrong. But what I found before I did changed how I think about every piece of software Microsoft has ever shipped. Here's what's strange about that statement. For most of my life, turning off your antivirus was the kind of thing your IT department sent threatening emails about. It was the digital equivalent of driving without a seatbelt. Defender was the floor, the baseline, the thing that at minimum stood between you and a bad day. And then I started reading the research. Not the blog posts, not the Reddit threads, the actual documented findings from security professionals who look at this software for a living. And my entire frame shifted. So before you assume this is going to be another conspiracy-flavored takedown of a big tech company, I want to be clear about something. This is not about Microsoft being evil. It's about Microsoft making choices that serve Microsoft. And those choices having real consequences for your machine, your data, and honestly, your sense of ownership over a device you paid for. By the end of this, you'll have a specific, tested alternative to Defender. You'll know exactly what to turn off, what to replace it with, and why the default setup is costing you more than you realize. Let's start with what 3 independent security researchers all confirmed within the last 12 months, because this isn't speculation. There's a paper trail. In late 2024, security researcher and longtime Microsoft observer Kevin Beaumont published detailed findings on the behavior of the Defender's telemetry functions in Windows 11. What he documented wasn't a vulnerability in the traditional sense. It wasn't a zero-day exploit. It was intended behavior. Defender collecting behavioral data from your system and feeding it back to Microsoft's cloud infrastructure, even when you've set your privacy options to what Microsoft labels basic. Beaumont's work was careful, cited, and specific. He wasn't claiming Defender was ransomware. He was saying the data footprint of this tool is significantly larger than what Microsoft's documentation describes, and that most users have no idea it's happening. That finding didn't exist in isolation. Wolfgang Kondek, a researcher with over 2 decades in enterprise security, has written extensively about what he calls the trust boundary collapse in modern endpoint security tools. His argument is precise. When your security software and your operating system vendor are the same entity, the independence that makes security software meaningful starts to dissolve. You're no longer getting an external check on the system. You're getting the system checking itself and reporting back to its own creator. Think about that for a second. That's not a conspiracy. That's just a structural conflict of interest. And then there's the performance research. AV-Test, one of the most respected independent antivirus evaluation labs in the world, has consistently flagged Microsoft Defender as one of the heavier resource consumers in its category. In their most recent full evaluation cycle, Defender registered above average impact on system performance across multiple test scenarios: file copying, application launches, website loading during active scanning. For people running mid-range hardware, this isn't abstract. This is the lag you felt and couldn't explain. This is the fans spinning up when you open Chrome. This is real. Now here's what makes this more than just a performance complaint. The data collection piece and the performance piece are connected. Defender isn't just scanning for threats locally. It's operating what Microsoft calls cloud-delivered protection, which means it's uploading samples, behavioral data, and file metadata to Microsoft servers continuously. Microsoft says this makes Defender smarter and faster at catching new threats. That may be true, but it also means your security software is maintaining an ongoing data connection with its parent company, and that data is governed by Microsoft's privacy policy, not yours. What you're typing, what you're opening, what you're running, fragments of all of it are part of that stream. If you're on Windows 11 right now, open your settings, go to privacy and security, and then Windows Security. Click on Virus and Threat Protection, then Manage. Settings. You'll see Cloud Delivered Protection toggled on by default. Right below it, Automatic Sample Submission. Also on by default. Microsoft frames both as safety features. But what they are, technically, is an opt-out data sharing arrangement that most people never saw because it was never framed as a choice. But here's what really bothers me about this, and this is where the story gets less about one tool and more about a pattern. Microsoft has spent the last 3 years in a quiet but aggressive pivot toward what analysts describe as an AI data strategy. The recall feature, announced in 2024 and then rapidly walked back after public backlash, was the most visible version of this. Recall was going to take periodic screenshots of your entire screen, everything you were doing, everything you were reading, everything you were typing, and index it locally using AI so you could search it later. It was framed as a productivity tool. What it actually was, and what security researchers immediately recognized it as, was a continuous surveillance log of your digital life stored on your own machine. Microsoft pulled back on the default on rollout because the reaction was swift and loud. But recall still exists, It's still in Windows 11 on Copilot Plus PCs, and the thinking behind it, that your behavioral data is a resource to be harvested and monetized, that thinking didn't go away when they changed the rollout settings. Here's the thing about Defender specifically. It already has the access that Recall was trying to normalize. It already has deep hooks into your system behavior. It already maintains a cloud connection. It was already reporting before Recall was ever announced. Recall was just the version that was visible enough to create outrage. Defender has been doing a quieter version of this for years, and nobody staged a protest because security software is supposed to behave that way. It's like having a cleaning service with a master key to your house. You hire them to clean, and they do clean. But they also copy your documents and take photos of your rooms. And when you ask about it, they say it helps them clean better. You might accept that for a while, but at some point, you start wondering why a cleaning service needs to know that much about you. When I started pulling on this thread, I found myself frustrated, not at any single feature, but at the cumulative architecture of the thing. Microsoft's revenue model has shifted. Windows used to be a product you bought. Now it's a platform that generates ongoing data, ongoing subscriptions, and increasingly ongoing behavioral insight. You're not paying for Windows the way you paid for Windows XP. You're feeding a system that needs your engagement data to justify its AI investments to shareholders. And Defender is one of the most privileged access points that system has to your machine. I'm not saying that to make you feel powerless. I'm saying it because understanding the motive makes the solution clearer. So here's exactly what I run instead, layered in a specific order, and I'll tell you precisely why each piece is there. The first thing you're going to do is download Malwarebytes free. Not the premium version. You don't need it for what we're building here. Malwarebytes has been independently audited and has consistently ranked among the top performers in detection rate testing by both AV-Test and AV-Comparatives. It does one thing extremely well. It catches active malware and removes it cleanly. It does not have a cloud connection that sends behavioral telemetry about your normal activity back to a corporate server. It does not run a persistent background process that monitors your system while you work. You run it manually when you want to scan, it scans, it reports, you close it. That's the model. Go to malwarebytes.com, download the free version, install it, and immediately go into settings and disable automatic startup. You want this tool available, not running. Cost, $0. Setup time, 4 minutes. The second layer is a DNS level blocker, and this is where things get genuinely interesting. DNS is the system your computer uses to translate website names into actual addresses. Every time you type a URL, your machine makes a DNS request to figure out where to go. What most people don't realize is that this same system handles most of the data collection requests that Defender and other Microsoft services make. By switching your DNS provider to something like NextDNS or Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1, you route those requests through a server that actively blocks known tracking and telemetry domains. NextDNS has a free tier that handles up to 300,000 queries per month. That's more than enough for a standard household. Go to nextdns.io, create a free account, follow their setup guide for Windows. It takes about 6 minutes. Once you've done this, the data that Defender and other Windows services try to send to Microsoft's telemetry servers gets quietly dropped before it ever leaves your network. You don't have to fight the software. You just remove its exit route. The third layer is the Windows privacy settings audit. I know, that sounds boring, but stay with me because this is where most people leave 50% of the value on the table. Press Windows and I together to open settings. Go to privacy and security. Start at the top of that menu and work down. Diagnostics and feedback. Set this to basic and turn off the option to send optional diagnostic data. Inking and typing personalization, turn it off. Activity history, turn it off. Search permissions, turn off cloud content search. Each of these is a separate data stream that feeds into Microsoft's profile of your behavior. None of them affect your system's ability to function. They exist because the default is always whatever benefits Microsoft's data collection, not your privacy. This takes about 10 minutes and costs nothing. The fourth layer is where we actually address Defender directly. I'm not going to tell you to permanently disable real-time protection. For most users, having it completely off creates genuine risk. What I am going to tell you is to disable the features that are doing the data collection work without meaningfully increasing your security. Go back to Windows Security. Go to Virus and Threat Protection, then Manage Settings. Turn off Cloud Delivered Protection. Turn off Automatic Sample Submission. Leave Real-Time Protection on. What you've just done is kept Defender's local scanning engine, which does have legitimate value, while cutting off the outbound data pipeline that makes it a surveillance tool. Your machine still scans for local threats. It just stops sending behavioral data to Microsoft's servers continuously. That's a meaningful distinction. Now, before you implement any of this, I want to be direct about who this might not be right for. If you're working in an enterprise environment with a managed IT policy, Do not change these settings without talking to your IT team. Well, no, all right, corporate networks often require Defender's cloud features for centralized threat monitoring. If you're running Windows in a virtual machine for security research, the default Defender configuration might be part of your testing environment. And if you're a less technical user who relies on automatic updates and cloud features as a safety net, the trade-off of reduced data collection versus reduced automatic threat intelligence is something you should think carefully about. This is about taking control of your privacy settings. It's not about eliminating every security layer on your machine. Windows Defender's local scanning still has a role in a layered approach. The goal here is to strip the surveillance features, not the core protection. These 4 layers together, Malwarebytes Free for on-demand scanning, NextDNS for network-level blocking, a privacy settings audit for the data streams most people don't know exist, and a targeted Defender configuration that disables cloud telemetry while keeping local scanning. This is a complete setup. It costs you $0. It takes roughly 25 minutes, and it substantially reduces the amount of behavioral data leaving your machine every day. Turning off Defender's cloud features is a small act, but the thinking behind it matters more than the act itself. We've reached a point with personal computing where the defaults are set by companies whose interests are not the same as yours. That's not cynicism, that's just the economics of the current software model. Microsoft's incentive is to gather as much behavioral data as possible because that data trains their AI systems, feeds their advertising and partnership infrastructure, and justifies their cloud services revenue to shareholders. Your incentive is to have a fast, private, functional machine that does what you tell it to do. Those two incentives overlap sometimes. They also diverge in ways that the default settings of Windows 11 reflect very clearly. What I want you to take away from this isn't paranoia. You're not being surveilled by government agents through your antivirus software, but you are feeding a corporate data pipeline that you didn't explicitly consent to, that most people don't know exists, and that you can significantly reduce without giving up any meaningful security. You're the administrator of your own computer. That's not a metaphor. It's literally your account type. And administrators get to decide on how their systems behave. There are millions of people making these choices right now. People who looked at the recall announcement and decided something had changed. People who started reading the privacy settings they'd ignored for years. People who installed NextDNS and then watched in mild astonishment at the volume of telemetry requests their machine was making. You're not paranoid for caring about this. You're paying attention. Do the audit today. Not because your system is about to explode, but because this is your machine, and you should know what it's doing. If this is the kind of deep dive research you want more of, the stuff that takes weeks to compile, not hours, subscribe and let me know in the comments which Windows feature you want investigated next. I rate every single one. And share this with someone who's been running Defender on default settings since the day they bought their laptop. They'll want to know.